This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rameca Vincent Leary, and welcome to this special edition of inStudio. So, what do you get when you cross paths with a critically acclaimed Hollywood actor, producer, director, and author? The answer is the one and only Bill Duke. During this WSRE exclusive interview, we'll sit down with this amazing man and explore the many facets of his colorful life. Stay with us. We'll have more right after this. Welcome back, everyone. During this special edition of inStudio, we'll be exploring various facets of Bill Duke's life while also addressing how colorism, interracial discrimination, has impacted him personally. To be clear, there's a difference between racism and colorism. Racism is discrimination by those outside one's race, which can also include other factors. In contrast, colorism is when people are discriminated against by people within their own race based on skin tone. Although it's most prevalent among blacks, colorism exists in all races. Now, in addition to exploring Bill Duke's numerous acting, directorial, and producing credits, we'll discuss how he played an integral role in my colorism-related dissertation research. We'll address the study and also hear from a few focus group members who participated in the groundbreaking research. But first, we're going to start our journey by taking a closer look at his early childhood and humble beginnings. Now, before I do that, I just want to thank you, Bill, for being such an exceptional man with a heart of gold. You are a treasured friend, definitely one in a million. How are you doing?
God bless you. Thank you for having me. Much appreciated, sincerely. Thank you.
All right, Bill. So glad to have you. Now, I had a chance to read your book. I smiled, I laughed, and I even cried, Bill. You have such an exceptional life that's really been sprinkled with its share of ups and downs. But since I have you for the entire show, here's what we're going to do. In this segment, we'll focus on your early childhood. Upstate New York. Let's start this thing off. You and your sister, Yvonne, two peas in a pod, right?
Yes, definitely.
And
Poughkeepsie, New York.
Absolutely. Now, one of the pictures I remember from your book was you in a baby carriage out on the lawn. Now, you and Yvonne played with a lot of the neighborhood kids. Every now and then, you would get into a bit of trouble. One story from the book that really made me laugh was when you and Yvonne decided to ride your bikes in the middle of the street. Now, there was somebody older in the neighborhood who intervened. Why don't you pick up where I just left off?
Well, in those days, you know, everybody looked out for each other in the neighborhood. And my father had told my sister and I never to ride our bikes on the street because of traffic, but on the side of the street or sidewalk. Well, we were hard-headed. So we were riding our bikes on the street one day. And Mrs. Johnson, the next door neighbor, comes out and says nothing, takes off the bike, puts us on her couch and says, "Don't say a word."
Oh.
She calls my father at work and says, "Bill, they're riding their bikes on the street." My father said, "I'll be there in an hour." That was the longest hour of our lives.
Now, interestingly, the switch factor, right? Because my grandma practiced that as well. And she would always tell us when it was time for a, quote, whipping, go out and pick the switch. Now, you went out and picked the switch many times, but your dad made you go back again, right?
Well, because my sister and I thought we were smarter than my father, so we would crack the switch in different places a little bit. So when he hit us, the switch would fall apart. But he looked through the window and saw us. We had to go get it several times.
Hilarious. Now let's talk about, because throughout the entire show, we will be sprinkling in elements of colorism. You had a next door neighbor named Nancy, very good friend of yours. And one story that really made me cry, Bill, was kindergarten for you. Okay, getting on that bus. Nancy sat one place, you sat in another area. Of course, you all get to the school. It's time to introduce yourself. Yes, you were a little nervous. It wasn't the best day of your life.
No, it wasn't.
But something happened when you got home, according to the book. You tried to basically scrub the blackness off of yourself, right? And that was also the time where you thought about drinking the bleach. So talk about that for just a second.
Well, Nancy Plass was a young white girl next door that lived next door to me. And we were friends, I thought. But the first day of school, she sat with the white children in the back, in front, I was in the back of the bus.
Right.
And, I expected her to say something, but she was with some young white boys. She said nothing. And they kind of scowled at me. And so I got off the bus and then went to class, and in introducing ourselves, the teacher said, "What's your name?" I said, "Bill." And she said, "Bill who?" I said, "Bill Duke." At lunchtime, a few of the young kids who heard that were in the class, they came over near to me and they mocked me and they said, "Hey, what's your name?" And one white boy said, "Bill." And they said, "No, your last name." And the other kid said, "Duke." No, and the other kid said, "No, I thought your name was Bill Nigger."
Oh,
and,
awful.
Then they laughed, and Nancy laughed also. And so when I got home, there's something called Babbo in those days.
Right.
And, I went to the bathroom. I got in the bathtub and tried to scrub the black off of myself. And then there was some bleach, and I tried to drink the bleach. But my mother came in the bathroom just in time and snatched it from me. It was how can I say? There are moments you don't forget.
Oh, yes. And that's one of them. Now, in contrast in relation to colorism, I read about the Penfield sisters who had gone through so much. Now, they were lighter-skinned blacks. And, of course, you and Yvonne, darker-skinned blacks. They didn't see color when it came to you and Yvonne. Expand on that.
Well, we hit it off because we just loved and liked each other. They were adopted by my Uncle Charlie, and, they were abandoned by their parents. And so he was a great man, and his wife, Aunt Etta. And so when it came to us, we were kids that would play together, and they never saw any difference between any of us. We never saw any difference in them. We just loved them, and they loved us, and we had fun like kids are supposed to.
Oh, yes. So I got a little hungry, Bill, when I was reading portions of the book. One thing that your mom always said, my children are going to have a meal on the table every single day. When I had the rundown of the things that you would eat, my mouth was watering, really made me want to grab a bite. But your mom and dad loved you unconditionally, and it was a tight-knit household, loving family. And I know that their inspiration, I know they're gone now, but interject a little bit about how they influenced you growing up.
Well, my parents, they never went to high school. I think they had second and third grade educations. They were some of the most brilliant people that I've ever known, and that they worked tirelessly. My mother had 2 jobs. My father worked 3. He worked 7 days a week. And it was watching that example. They said something to my sister and I that we never forgot. And there's a phrase that they went by. They would say to us, "You're no better than anybody else, but nobody's better than you." And that stuck in our heads. And my father was a very strict man, and we had a half acre of lawn. I had to mow the lawn every Saturday, while other kids were out playing basketball, football, baseball, etc. And I had to mow by hand the entire lawn.
And those patches, Bill, right? Those patches, your dad would make you go back. And not just the patch, but he made you go over the entire lawn again.
If I missed one spot, I had to do the entire lawn again. And I just hated it. I was so angry with him because, they were out playing. And I said to him one day, I said, the Mrs. Jones across the street, she has patches in her lawn. And the lady, the Mr. Johnson has patches in his lawn. What's the big deal? And so my father said to me, "Well, I'll guess you'll be living with them from now on."
But he taught you something great. Always strive for excellence, correct?
Well, he always said, good is not good enough. If you don't do it right, don't do it.
Absolutely.
And so I learned, and I carry that with me today. I'm a perfectionist. You know, when I watch my movies, no matter what anybody else thinks of it, I sit in the back row and I know I could have done something better. And it's because of him and his discipline.
Self-perception.
Yes, yes.
So, Bill, athlete, you played basketball, you played football. In high school, you had a varied amount of friends, various colors, et cetera, et cetera. You had some friends in the band as well, but your high school English teacher did something with your poetry that really changed your life, submitting your poems for a contest and the fact that you came out a winner. How did that impact you?
Well, it's hard to explain. You know, I was, to be honest, a racist. As I think you saw in the book.
Yes.
We had been beaten, my sister and I, we were like 5 and 6 years old, or 7, I think it was, by these white bikers. And we ran home and told my father, and he took his gun and went hunting for them. And when we saw them, we wouldn't tell my father because we know he would go to jail. So
right.
Those are the kinds of incidents I faced. And I really disliked white people because I just thought they were all racist. I put them all in one category. Miss Walker, my English teacher in high school, she, you know, I was tall, dark, not popular, and I had a disease called dyslexia.
Oh,
and
right.
so I didn't read that well. I speak very well, so I was to write in a journal all the time. And I used to write my journal in her class. She told me 3 times not to do it. I ignored her because I thought she was mean. The 4th time I did it, she took my journal away and told me to leave the class. And I just was so angry. The end of that school year, the next semester, the last day of the class, I'm sitting there just screaming at her, you know, and I'm getting ready to leave the class. And she says, "Duke, wait a minute." I said, "Miss Walker," she says, "sit down and wait." Other kids leave the class. She goes in her desk and she pulls out 2 books. One, my journal. She gave it back to me. And then she pulled out another book. She said, "Look at it." It was a book from the National Poetry Contest. She had submitted 2 of my poems, and I got a recognition. That was very confusing because she was white. I didn't know how to deal with that because I didn't know what to say. She said, "You don't have to say anything. I believe in you."
Monumental moment. Now, also with your first role in a play and also getting up on that stage, I know the first time you got on stage, you sort of froze a minute. Hey, everybody freezes every now and then, but you made your way through that. And as some would say, the rest is history. So what we're going to do in the next segment is we're going to talk about that acting bug and then expand into your Hollywood presence. So stay right there where you are, Bill. We're going to get back to you in just a second. And everyone out there, hold on to your seats, folks. We're just warming up. After the break, we'll discuss Bill Duke's introduction to Hollywood, including his multifaceted work as an actor, director, and producer. You're definitely in for a treat.
Imagine if your students could travel to Borneo, the 3rd largest island in the world, without ever leaving the classroom. With PBS Learning Media, they can. It's a free service providing thousands of research-based, standards-aligned digital resources for use in pre-K through college classrooms. Teachers have instant access to trustworthy, classroom-ready, and curriculum-targeted lessons, photographs, videos, documents, and interactives.
PBS Learning Media helps engage my students because of the high interest level, the fantastic visuals, the way they present the information captures my students' attention so that different kinds of learners are all able to engage in the material and learn from it.
Join our community of educators and discover the wealth of resources waiting for you at PBS Learning Media. Infinite inspiration for your classroom.
Hello, everyone. During this segment, we're happy to welcome back actor, director, producer, and humanitarian Bill Duke. You're definitely a man who wears many hats, so let's pick up the discussion with your introduction to Hollywood and tell us about your first acting role.
My first significant acting role was in a film called Car Wash.
Oh, yes.
It was directed by the great Michael Schultz, who's still doing great things. And it had Richard Pryor and Ivan Dixon and George Carlin, Danny DeVito, some wonderful, and the Pointer Sisters, Henry Kingi, some wonderful people. And it was like a family affair, you know. When Richard Pryor came on the set, we were like all like in awe. But he was so humble and funny. He made us laugh all the time, and it was a wonderful experience. It introduced me to Hollywood to a certain extent. So that was my first really big film, was Car Wash.
Now, here's the thing. So you went on a tour. The cast went on a tour across the country. And I will tell you, my dad is a U.S. Navy man. He gathered up the neighborhood kids. We basically rented out the theater, okay, to see Car Wash. It was all the buzz, the talk of the town. The soundtrack was just impeccable. And recently, about 2 months ago, I happened to be on a network and I saw it again. I said, oh, yeah, it never goes out of style. Now, let's move on to Arnold Schwarzenegger and Predator, Mac, right?
Yes, Mac. We were in the jungles of Puerto Vallarta and Palenque for a long time. Weather sometimes above 100 degrees. And, the first 2 weeks we were there, around the catering tent, the caterer had put netting to keep the bugs out. But when we looked in our food, there were bugs in the food. And we used to tell them, take this crap back. We're not eating the bugs in it. But there was no more food. So by the end of the second week, the bugs were called protein.
Now, Bill, interesting thing. So Arnold's trainer was named Sven, would run 5 miles a day, then go to the workout room and say, hey, Bill, why don't you join us? Now, I know that you did it for a little while. And then you were teased in some respects because everyone else pretty much had gotten sick and you hadn't. But I read in the book where the filtration system at the hotel went awry and then you finally got sick. And that wasn't the best time, was it?
Well, they laughed at me because, I at that time was a total vegetarian, basically. And they thought I was so weird. And I didn't get sick. And I said, because I eat right. And when I did get sick, they said, I guess you didn't eat right today. So.
You know what? You mentioned something else, Bill, regarding Predator. And this is an interesting factoid. Jean-Claude Van Damme was the original Predator, the man in the suit. Right. And he had a serious issue with dehydration, right? Yes. According to the book. That's
right. They flew him through trees and stuff with this felt suit on. And it was like 100 degrees or more at sometimes. And he was just dehydrated, so he passed out twice. And the producer came over to him and said, you passed out again, I'm firing you. And he said, I'm not passing out on purpose, I'm dehydrated. Right. He said, you're costing me money, you're gonna get fired. 2 weeks went by, passed out, fell on the ground, and got fired. That was Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think his first job in America.
Oh, that's interesting. Let's move on to Commando, because you also worked with Arnold Schwarzenegger in that movie. And from what you tell me in the book, such an approachable man. He is so nice. You enjoyed the relationship, and the fact that you had this opportunity to work with him with both of these projects was amazing, right?
Yeah, he was one of the biggest stars in the world at that time, and he embraced me and other actors. And he was like, when you work with, it was like working with family, because he had an ego. He came prepared. He expected us to come prepared, and it was like, he joked, had fun. As you know, filmmaking is a rough business. I mean, you're there for 12, 14 hours, whatever, per day. But to have someone to create an environment that's comfortable and welcoming, it was wonderful. It was really, really one of the great experiences I've had.
Now, let's talk about you and Richard Gere in American Gigolo. Now, your character, Leon, in that movie, I've got to tell you, Bill, I saw the movie and I was so scared of you. When I saw your character, I said, oh, he just seems so mean. But that was your character. So talk about Leon for a moment, okay?
Well, Leon, was basically, he's like a bisexual pimp. In other words, he pimped everybody and everything. The only thing that Leon loved was money. And Richard Gere thought that was his buddy, but to Leon, that was his hoe.
Exactly.
And when mistakes were made in the end, that's when the true side of Mike came out. But working with Richard, who is a consummate professional, comes prepared, sometimes stays in character too, was a great thing. I mean, he was gracious. I mean, I've been very fortunate to work with talented people that are good people also.
Now, Mel Gibson, I know you enjoyed working with him, didn't you?
Mel is, I mean, I know he's gone through a lot, but Mel is one of the funniest people I've ever met. Always jokes, always coming to the set with humor, and smart, talented, and I think a really good actor and director. I mean, he's directed some great stuff. So when we were together and working together, hospitable, as I said, I've been very fortunate to work with people that are good people and great actors and great talent. And I prefer that because it's painful enough just to do it with good people. But when you have people who are filled with ego or whatever it is, it really makes it very difficult. So I was very fortunate.
It's amazing. We're going to get through several other things. So let's talk about Menace to Society, X-Men: The Last Stand, and your recent release through Netflix, High Flying Bird. So listen, you've done so much. X-Men: The Last Stand, you talked about working with the green screen for the first time. How was that?
It was a very challenging experience because you're talking to a screen as though there's something or somebody that you're talking to, but you're hearing what the person is saying. It's being read to you or whatever, but they put the person on the screen later on.
Right.
And so I'd never done that before. So it was a learning experience for me.
Absolutely. Now, High Flying Bird, most recent release. How did you enjoy working with that cast of characters? I love basketball, by the way. That's my favorite sport, so I was all in.
Well, you know, I've been very fortunate recently. 3 films that I loved, Mandy with Nicolas Cage.
Right.
And I'm on the series now called Black Lightning. And then High Flying Bird, Stephen Suzie. It's the second time I've worked with Stephen. The first time I worked was on a film called The Limey.
Okay.
Many years ago. And then he asked me to do High Flying Bird. And High Flying Bird, you know, it's like, I call it edutainment. I mean, he talks about the politics and the business of basketball and how young guys come that have never had anything, they get all this money, and what do they do with it? And what are the rules that they must follow in terms of survival? The thing that was fascinating about the film was the entire film was shot with 5 iPhones.
Really?
A feature film.
Okay.
And he shot it, and Stephen shot it in 2 weeks.
Amazing.
When they did the dolly shots, they rolled them around in a wheelchair.
Innovative.
Is that amazing?
Oh, it is. It is. Now, we must talk about your directorial ventures. Now, A Rage in Harlem, Deep Cover, and Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit are just a few, but with Hoodlum, you are on a very stringent time constraint, especially near the end of that film. And there was a part of the book where you mentioned somebody burst out in laughter, and everyone wound up laughing for about 15 minutes. Do you want to talk about that for a second?
Well, we were shot in Chicago. We had to be finished at a certain time. The film, if you see it, I mean, major scenes I had to direct and, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one day near the end of filming, we worked, I think it was 20 hours.
Yes.
And everybody was totally exhausted. But we just kept moving and going. And somebody, I think they were just hysterical. They were so tired, just started laughing a little bit. And then another person started giggling. And the next thing you know, we are rolling on the floor, laughing out of exhaustion for like 10 or 15 minutes. It was
a chain reaction.
It was a chain reaction. We couldn't stop. But we were snorting and
you just can't.
It was crazy. It was crazy, but it was family also.
Let's move on to television, okay? Directorial ventures, including appearances. You said a lot about Palmerstown, USA, which happened to be one of my favorite shows back in the day, and Michael J. Fox also appeared with you on the show. It had an impacting difference in your life.
Well, Donnell, myself, and Michael J. Fox and others, it was, you know, it took a family, a black family and a white family in the days of segregation. They lived close to each other. And what's beautiful about it is that the kids in the family, our sons and daughters, they came together as one. They did not hate each other. And so the kids, to a great extent, were the instructors to the parents. And so the young white kid and myself started talking.
Okay.
At first it was awkward, but then we exchanged, you know, in a human way. What was great about this show, it showed the humanity of blacks and whites, not
Absolutely
superior or inferior, but our mutual humanity. And that's one of the first that I saw.
Let's talk about directing credits. And I'm just going to run these off for you. Dallas, Knots Landing, Hill Street Blues, Miami Vice. Now, I'm going to jog your memory here for a minute, because when you directed your first episode of Dallas and you entered the CBS lot, someone asked you the question, quote, and this is a quote, "Who are you delivering for?" That's what the guard asked you. And you thought of Martin Luther King Jr. at the time. And will you tell us what you said?
Well, you know, I was the first black director ever on Dallas.
Right.
And it was a major accomplishment because it opened the doors to me based on my work. And so I was very stoked to go there. So I drive up to the gate. The guard, I roll the window down. The guard looks at me and says, "Who are you delivering for?" Now, I wanted to say to him, "I'm about to deliver a can of whip ass to you," but I didn't say that.
You
Because
said
the night
something kind
before,
of.
I had heard Dr. King, but I said instead, no, there must be some confusion. My name is Bill Duke. I'm the first black director on Dallas, and I'm delivering my talents to the show. Could you please open the gate? The most gratifying thing about that moment was the look on his face.
Absolutely. Now hold that thought there for just a moment, Bill, because we're coming right back momentarily. So folks, in addition to producing 2 critically acclaimed documentaries, Dark Girls and Light Girls, Bill Duke carved time out of his busy schedule to write an autobiography chronicling his 40-year career on screen and behind the camera. We'll discuss these items and much more coming up right after this.
My name is Dominic, and I bring my daughter Alice to the Imagination Station. Alice doesn't go to daycare or anything like that, so this is a good way for her to interact with other kids. And you know, she was really bad about sharing until she came here. Actually, like even like coming back today after like a few weeks' notice, I think she's improved a lot. And I think just interacting with others and being able to learn a few words and stuff from the other kids has been really crucial for her development, I believe. There's a lot of different ways, a lot of different interpretations of how you can do something, and I think that Imagination Station offers a lot of diversity and variability in the ways to do things, and I think that really benefits the kids. The thing about public television is that it's something that kind of bridges the generations. I mean, the same lessons I learned as a child, the same lessons you learn now. It's a really good way for people to just address issues, both like socially, and I think it's just a way for someone who spends a lot of time these days like inside a house to actually learn about society and what's going on around them. Like every kid's show seems like a kid's show, but there's just so much more depth to it.
We're back with Bill Duke. During this segment, we have so much to explore, and we'll begin with the 2 critically acclaimed documentaries he produced that pertain to colorism, Dark Girls and Light Girls. First, Bill, who inspired Dark Girls? Did your sister Yvonne have any inspiration for this?
I think my the major inspiration for this, and other friends of mine, but my sister basically seeing what she went through as a young girl, teased and tortured because of the color of her skin. Just ugly things. And I really wanted to do something to create a film that talked about those issues, but also the beauty of Black women, and to let them know that as a Black man, not only do I respect them, but I praise them for their looks, who they are, and that people who make fun of them because of the color of their skin or their hair are just ignorant savages as far as I'm concerned. But the fact of the matter is to give them recognition and a voice. That's what I wanted to do with this film, because we have great divisions, as you know,
right,
in our community still today. If you go online, look under hashtag Team Light Skin, hashtag Team Dark Skin, you'll see Black, dark-skinned women and light-skinned women still clashing. And the irony is, I know white females that go to tanning salons twice a week sometimes, get butt lifts, both lips, and crinkle their hair to look more ethnic. Everybody wants to be Black except us, it seems.
Salient point, Bill. Now let's transition into light girls. So you're covering both facets.
Yes, well, what inspired me for light girls is, when I did dark girls, I wanted to do light girls, but what really got me moving was a friend of mine who told me, she's light complected, that she loved dark girls, but her story has never been told. And she said that she used to go, in junior high school, into the bathroom, to go to the bathroom. She came out to wash her hands. The dark-skinned girls take her to the floor and say, "Oh, you think that straight hair is pretty, huh? You think you're better than us?" They would literally pull her hair out by the roots.
Oh.
And her skull would bleed.
Awful.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So I knew that story had to be told also.
Absolutely, Bill. Now, let's talk about your experiences as a Black man and actor, your early days in Hollywood. Now, we know that colorism exists in all races, and sometimes we can be typecast or stereotyped, and I read many examples in your book, some of which I actually used for my dissertation work through my own research. But did you find it difficult to actually gain roles in Hollywood that you felt were right for you? Do you think colorism had any kind of influence with any of the casting?
Well, I think that, I'm 6'5", I'm dark complected. And to many people that are not of our culture, that is threatening. And so to give me roles that were more threatening, roles that were more, how can I say, I was more antagonistic.
Okay.
I was a mean boss or whatever. That's why I loved Car Wash, because Car Wash, even though I was a young, angry Black man, it showed my humanity. And that's why Palmerstown, USA, the same thing, that it showed the humanity of who I was as a human being, not as a Black human being, but a human being.
Part of the human race.
Of the human race, exactly. And that's why I like projects that, have a story that, especially in this day of division, that show our commonality as human beings.
Absolutely. Now, we're going to fast forward to the CW in Black Lightning. I would like for you to talk specifically about your role on the show, and you are just burning it up, Bill Duke. So talk about Black Lightning. We're excited. We're jazzed, okay?
Well, I play Agent Odell, and he is, how can I say, you're not told really what he is. That he just kind of works for the government, but he helps the government clean things up. And he's kind of like, has a lot of authority and power that he's been given. And he is kind of like trying to uncover who Black Lightning is, who are the other people. and it's being kept a secret. And so finally, when he talks to the lead character and she starts lying to him, he says, you know, you're a liar, but guess what? I'm going to find out who you really are. You can bet on that. And so the rest of the series is him investigating and looking and watching. And finally, and you'll see on the last episode of the second season, what happens.
All right, I can't wait. You know, the anticipation is killing me. So let's move on now. Bill, your life has had its share of ups and downs. There was a significant event in your life where your agent said, okay, Bill, take a vacation, go to Hawaii. You decided to go to Hawaii. Unfortunately, you were involved in a plane crash, and that changed your life monumentally. And it also cemented your relationship with a higher power, God, as you said in the book, that you kept him compartmentalized or in a box. Can you expand on how that experience changed your life?
Well, you know, being raised as a Christian Baptist, there were certain parameters that you're given in terms of your belief systems, Jesus, God, and the Bible, etc. And I was basically a faithful person. My enforced those rules on my sister and I. And I believed in God, but, you know, it was just that in terms of my Christian beliefs. But in the plane crash, you know, we crashed in the water, and when you think of water, you think of something soft, but from a height of that height, luckily the pilot was a great pilot, and the back of the plane hit first in the front, but still it's a damaging effect, and it tore the bolts from my seat and threw me forward, and I have a scar still from that, from, you know, it smashing my face. And I think I just passed out, and it's hard to explain, some awareness thing went up here and actually could see, it was like an out-of-body experience, see me passed out, blood coming up in the water, the pilot's face had hit the control dashboard, and we were all like, you know, out of it. And this thing observing, it's totally calm.
Totally calm.
My physical body wakes up, and I look around and I say, since I don't swim and the water's coming up in the plane, I say out loud, well, Bill, you always want to know how you were going to die, and now you know. And at that moment, the pilot wakes up. He says, everybody get off the plane, go on the wing, etc. And I'm just sitting there because I don't swim. I'm not going to live. I said, I don't swim. He says, and he said, get your life down from under your seat. I said, get your life down from under your seat. So I did, put it around my neck. He says, pull. I looked down and I was in shock, and I pulled all the cords, but nothing would inflate. So he says, get out on the wing. So I pass him, go to the wing, and he pulls the right cord and it inflates. I'm standing on the wing. Everybody paddles away except for one lady who went down with the plane. And they get like 200 feet away, and he says, jump, jump, undertow, undertow. He says, jump, jump, undertow. I said, oh, what the, heck, what difference does it make? So I jump in the water. I went down once, twice. The third time I came up, the life donut was right here because I hadn't tied it around my waist. He said, paddle away. It's like a little dog. I start paddling, paddling, paddling. And I get like near them, and this mouth of water called undertow takes the plane under. If I had stayed on the plane, I would have died. But the plane crash, the miracle was for me that twice a year, the Hawaii Fire Department sends emergency rescue teams out to do just emergency rescue maneuvers. This day, they were 1/2 mile from where we crashed. They saw our plane go in, and they saved our lives.
Now, that was a monumental miracle. So glad that you shared that with our viewers, Bill. And you're doing so many exceptional things. And back to the Duke Media Foundation, what it stands for, media education and media literacy. And I've gone to the website, and I've read so much about it in addition to what you have in your book. Speak about that, if you will, please.
I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen a lot of people suffer in this business, particularly young people, and they come into the business with passion but no understanding of the industry, what it is. And so at the Duke Media Foundation, we teach high school kids who are interested in our industry 2 things: media literacy. What has been the paradigm shift from film and television to media. Augmented reality, virtual reality, cell phone. Kids buy the apps, but they don't know anything about the jobs behind the creation of apps, like programming and coding and the rest of it. And we show them those things. The second thing we teach them is financial literacy, because young people are taught how to spend money, but not how to use money. So Karen Clark, who's a friend of mine, VP of City National Bank, comes in and teaches every week. She teaches financial literacy. What is Wall Street? What's the stock market? What is debt? What is credit? What is compound interest, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I want to give young people, I wish I had known these things when I was 15, 16, 17 years old, because I would have made some of the mistakes I made. So we try to give back. So we call it edutainment. We give young people people in front of them that can entertain them, but information that they can use for survival.
I like that, Bill. Stay where you are. We're just getting started, if you will, Bill. Now, folks, to find out more about the Duke Media Foundation, log on to the website you see right here on the screen, dukemediafoundation.org. And for details regarding his autobiography, log on to 40yearsofbillduke.com. Stay with us. We have more with this amazing man coming up next.
You are watching viewer-supported WSRE TV, a service of Pensacola State College.
Welcome back, folks. I'm so humbled to share that Bill Duke played an integral role in my colorism-related dissertation work. During this segment, some of the focus group participants who contributed to this groundbreaking and award-winning research are joining us now. Using their study-related pseudonyms, I'm happy to welcome Nancy Gribble, Mimi Rivera, and Jose Cuervo. First, I'll give you a brief overview of the study entitled Colorism in Media Content, a qualitative study focusing on film and perception. Then the participants will be able to interact with Bill Duke, sharing their colorism-related experiences while also asking him questions. Now, as you all know, through focus group research, I mentioned Bill Duke a lot, his documentaries, Dark Girls and Light Girls. But in the midst of our focus group research, we discovered colorism and perception as it pertains to film. Right? And the artifact that we used was a 1959 version of the movie Imitation of Life, starring Lana Turner and Juanita Moore. And it chronicled the lives of two moms. Remember that,
Yes.
Mimi?
Yes.
So we had the white mother-daughter storyline, Lana Turner, and we also had Sandra Dee. Now, their characters in the movie were Laura and Suzie. And then we had the black mother-daughter storyline, Juanita Moore and Susan Kohner. Now, Juanita Moore played the mother, Annie, and then we know that Susan Kohner played the daughter, Sarah Jane. But the interesting thing about Sarah Jane, folks, right, was that Sarah Jane was so light that she basically looked white, tried to pass for white, and she couldn't stand the, quote, shade of melanin that her mom, Annie, has. So she tried to stay far and away. And through your focus group research, you shared so many ideas and personal experiences, but then we also related this to the film industry as a whole, keeping in mind that all this was done before Black Panther was released, because we finished our research in January of 2017. Now, we're going to hit Black Panther in just a little bit and the significance therein. But, Bill, I'm going to start with Jose Cuervo. Jose is going to tell you about an experience that he had in L.A. and tell him what L.A. is.
Hello. I would like to tell you this. In L.A., in this part of the country, I like to refer to it as Lower Alabama. And I don't know whether you've ever been south or not, but my granddaughter, who is is a Caucasian, this child loved riding on my shoulders. She felt that her first couple of years of life, that I was her mode of transportation. So we were in this restaurant. She was holding onto my ears, sitting on my shoulders, and this lady approached me by saying, "Where did you steal this child from?" And I looked at her like, "What are you talking about? This is my granddaughter." "Oh no, that can't be your granddaughter. You're black and she's white." And I'm going like, okay. So, and how does that relate to the price of tea in China?
All right.
Wow.
Tell us.
Have you ever faced anything similar to that?
I think we face it, something like that, almost every day, still, unfortunately, till this day. One of my interns, this is not long ago, light-skinned black man, was walking across the Target parking lot to get batteries for his camera. A police car swoops up in front of him and said, "Put your hands on the hood." He said, "For what? What'd I do?" He said, "Put your hands on the hood." They frisked him. They turned him around and they said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "I'm going to Target for a battery for my camera." And they asked him, they said, "Why are you walking so hostile?" He said, "What do you mean? That's the way I walk." They said, "You're walking too hostile. Cut the hostile walk out." They let him go.
Thank you, Bill. That is pretty interesting, isn't it, Mimi? Now, Mimi, you've had your share of experiences as well. I want you to share one of yours with Bill and get his reaction.
Well, I am a teacher, and 27 years ago when I started, I was working for the first time in this school that I was the first person of color hired, and the children came up to me, and apparently they thought I had a tan, so one of the girls was rubbing my hand thinking, it's not coming off. Apparently their parents wore this spray tan or whatever, and it was just sad because, like I said, I stayed there for 7 years and I was the only hire of color ever. Yeah.
Now, Dallas, we heard Bill talk about people that go to the tanning salons. Now, when Coco Chanel came out with the swimsuits and the advent of people liking to get tans, because we know beforehand, aristocracy's sake, the paler you were, right, the more aristocratic that you were. But after Coco Chanel, people wanted to hand the copper tone and other products to get a little bit darker. So there are two sides to that coin, right?
Hey, yeah, and I'm sorry, if those people back in the day had seen, Robert Redford sunbathing in his younger days, cultures might have changed a little bit quicker.
Now, is there anything from the movie that you would like to share, a personal experience that you would like to discuss with Bill?
Sure. I mean, I do not, unfortunately, have anything to pull on from my life experiences because I've been lucky enough to, have been raised in a certain way where I didn't experience any colorism, and also the fact that I'm white.
Right.
But then from the movie, something that really carried with me, afterwards, long after that, I had seen it, was the end of the movie. You see, Annie's funeral scene.
Yes.
And I really took away from the fact that during the movie, all we ever see Annie do is, do the housework and just tend to daily routine, and you don't see her extracurricular activities. No. And so to see such a powerful gathering, there were so many people there, implies that during the times that we don't see her in the movie, she's going about her life, and she's impacting all of these people. Now, she had to have had a powerful character to make such a difference in so many people's lives. And that's something that could have been innate to her because of who she was as a person. It could have been something that she worked at, but regardless of that, Sarah Jane does not have that trait. She feels embattled with, her heritage and, the fact that she's black. And it affects her, and she doesn't understand that in being biracial, she has a very unique position, and she holds it against herself. And she doesn't see it as an opportunity to impact as many lives as her mother did. And especially at such a pivotal time, during which the movie takes place, she had a very powerful vantage point, but because of her perception of herself, she didn't see it that way. And so for that, I mean, Mr. Duke, has there ever been, a point in your life where, your self-perception got the better of you? Is that something that you've ever had to battle with? Is it something that you've ever helped anybody else with?
Well, it's a good question. I still battle with it. if a lot of people know who I am, but a lot of people don't. If I get on certain elevators and I'm alone with, say, a lady that's not my race, many times there is a backing up into the corner and clutching of bags. It's you know, what troubles me about this time, it's a time of unfortunate division. It's a time when we should all be coming together. I think we judge each other. You know, Dr. King said something I never forgot, and I think we should live by, but we don't. He said, you know, he hoped that someday, based on what he was sacrificing and doing, that his children would not be judged by the color of their skin,
right,
but by the content of their character.
Correct.
And I pray for that day to come before I die. I hope my goddaughter, you know, after I'm gone, experiences it. But, you know, it's our humanity, which is really the foundation of everything we do. And however we look, whether it's female or male or dark or light or white or black or Asian or whatever it is, our humanity transcends it because we all go through similar things.
And Bill, interestingly, in the movie at the end, Sarah Jane has, as someone say, a come to Jesus moment, okay? She realizes that she didn't love herself enough to love her mother, Annie. So she weeps on the casket, doesn't she? Right? And she cries, and she gets in the car with Suzie and Laura, and she's regretting all these things, but she was actually the cause of her mother's illness, the onset of her mother's illness, which is a shame because hindsight is 20/20, right? Mm-hmm. Would have, could have, should have, but didn't do it. And we see a lot of this in life. That's why your documentaries impacted me so much to embark upon this dissertation research. And I'm going to actually share a quote with the audience that you contributed to for the research of my dissertation. It is, quote, "Media has an amazing impact on youth. Media molds us." Talk about that, Bill.
You know, there's the sin of commission and the sin of omission in terms of media. The sin of commission is that when you're portrayed based on the color of your skin or your ethnicity, you know, negative ways, or in some of the reality shows, just mockingly ridiculousness, or if you're dark, you're bad, or da-da-da-da-da. That's the sin of commission, because you're perceived in that way. And it's a global phenom. When I travel around the world, our movies and reality shows are seen by everybody. I was just in Brussels, Belgium, and you know, you could see that. But then what's, I think, more sinister and more quiet is the sin of omission.
Right.
Whenever there's something really great, heroic, when I say heroic, that transcends just color, when there's nobility or whatever it is, many times we're not seen. And so young people, I think, base their self-perception on both the sin of commission and the sin of omission. Right. And you said something very important. Without self-love, it's difficult to really love anybody else.
Exactly.
Because you're expecting somebody else to fill the holes that you should be filling yourself.
And you know what, Bill? Let's talk about Black Panther. Now, I was on Facebook a short time ago. Your first ever Pioneer Award, I read, you awarded to the cast of Black Panther, directors, all those associated with the film. That film portrayed blacks, darker skinned blacks in positive Hollywood roles. We had been waiting for that in our focus group research. When will it happen, right?
Absolutely.
And then Black Panther comes out. So you want to talk briefly about that?
I liked it not only for the fact that it showed Black people in extremely positive, powerful, impacting ways, but our history.
Yes.
I mean, it showed us flying rockets and other things at a time where we were considered to be savages.
Exactly.
Our culture was far ahead of many other cultures. And I loved the way that it portrayed that. And the global phenom of it, the dollars that it made globally, it's a statement.
It is.
That people want to see more, and I hope it does happen.
All right, quickly, my panel. Jose, quickly, just a few parting words for Bill.
My statement is this: having traveled around the world in your 40-plus year career, what evidence have you found of like racism as being a universal thing, or is this something unique to America?
When I go to China, Japan, I saw women particularly with umbrellas. And I asked one time a friend that was with us, why are they carrying umbrellas? Because the sun is shining. And they said because they don't want to get dark.
Right.
Because the darker your complexion, the lower you are treated in the society. Are you aware of the fact that skin bleach is the largest selling cosmetic in the world, $50 billion a year, skin bleach?
Yes,
Absolutely.
sir. I'm aware of that.
All right, now, Bill, quickly, Dallas is going to just say a couple of words, and then Mimi, parting words.
I would just like to say that I really appreciate the fact that you are, doing everything that you're doing to try and improve the perceptions of colorism in the media and exposure to it. And, part of the reason that we stand where we are with division in the country is because we're just not educated.
All right, Mimi, and you.
And I would just like to thank you for all of your work. It's a complete testament to you, everything that you've done, and this culminating body of work on colorism and letting the youth of today know that we have to accept ourselves in order for everyone to accept us. And it starts with us, it starts at home with education, and so I really applaud you for doing this.
All right, Bill, seems like our time is up, and it passes so quickly, doesn't it? So with that said, definitely would like to thank Bill Duke for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us. It's been such a pleasure. I also want to thank my dissertation-related focus group participants who appeared on the show. You're appreciated so much. Now, viewers, before we go, we want to give you another opportunity to explore the Bill Duke Media Foundation. We're displaying the website information right now on the screen. Plus, you can also visit 40yearsofbillduke.com to find out more about his critically acclaimed autobiography. I'm Rameca Vincent Leary. Have a good evening, and remember to keep it locked in right here on WSRE, PBS for the Gulf Coast.